Thank you. Well, my name is Beverly Slough, and as you know, and I'm currently the chairman of the St. Johns County School Board. I've served that board for 10 years and have been very privileged to do so. I'm a 33-year resident of St. Johns County, moving here in 1979. My husband, Wes, is the pastor of Switzerland Community Church, and we came here to serve that church and have been there ever since. We have two daughters who are products of Nice High School and the whole St. Johns County school system, but they graduated from Nice, and they are both gainfully employed, and each of them has a master's degree, so we've done well. So I have two precious little grandchildren. In addition to serving on the school board, I'm a very active community servant as well. I'm currently the president of the United Way of St. Johns County and have previously served as the president of Epic Community Services Pact Coalition, Character Council of St. Johns County, and I serve on the Education Foundation Board. All of that said, I come to you today as a candidate for a much higher office, the U.S. House of Representatives, and the reason that I would like to go there and serve our community is because I see a very broken situation in our nation at the moment. We have become so polarized that nothing is moving forward in our nation. Fiscally, we are in a very, very difficult position. Militarily, we're decimating our military, and that's disturbing to me. And just as a strong fiscal conservative, I guess that's my major reason for wanting to go. I see the debt piling up on the heads of my grandchildren and on all of our future generations, and we've got to put a stop to that. We've got to turn our corner and balance our budget and become fiscally sound. I will say that through my work on the school board, when I first arrived at the school board, we were in a bad fiscal position, and now we have found ourselves in a much stronger position through hard work, discipline, cutting expenses and cost avoidance, finding ways to save money. We've cut our budget $40 million, and yet we've not laid off anybody. We've not cut programs for children. In fact, we've enhanced them. And we are the #1 school district in the state of Florida for the past 3 years, and on a strong track to be #1 again this year. So it's my pleasure and delight to be here, and welcome any questions you have.
Good. And we have them.
I'm sure you do.
Let me ask, would you have voted for or against raising the debt ceiling?
I would have voted against that, because historically, anytime you raise the debt ceiling, then spending goes up as well. It's much more prudent to cut spending, stay within your means. If the debt ceiling is raised, it has to be accompanied by cuts in spending to keep it, so you don't bump up against it and force another crisis and another increase in debt.
Have you signed or will you sign a no tax increase pledge?
I have not signed it, and I want to explain myself on that one. I've not been offered the opportunity, but were I offered the opportunity, I would not sign for this reason alone. I have no intention of raising anybody's taxes, and I'm very much, as a fiscal conservative, against raising taxes. However, as one of our former presidents got himself in trouble pledging no new taxes, there can be those situations where it's impossible to keep that pledge. I'm a person of integrity, and I like to keep my word. So I would not want to sign a piece of paper that said in no circumstances whatsoever, and for the rest of my life, would I vote to raise taxes. Now, all that said, I have no intention of raising anybody's taxes and would love to cut them and reduce them.
Do you, as you know, Social Security is supposed to be insolvent, I think, in 2038.
Mm-hmm.
The years keep changing, but that's the general direction. Would you oppose, would you favor raising the retirement age for Social Security?
I think we're going to have to make some changes to all of the, quote, entitlement programs. And I think definitely raising the retirement age a little bit is probably going to be a piece of the Social Security. As we see our populace, all of us in this room are close to the retirement age.
Speak for yourself.
Well, I can speak for myself. and I am a very vital person. I don't need to retire and sit down and not be a contributor to society at 65. So I think in most cases people are well able to work past that age, and if we're going to keep Social Security solvent, we're going to have to make some major changes to it.
Would you favor a change in the cost of living formula? that's one of the things that Representative Ryan has been suggesting, that those people are now on it would still get cost of living raises, but the formula would change so that it wouldn't be as great.
I would favor that. We've got to make some major changes, and we can't just automatically sustain automatic cost of living raises to any of our programs, not just Social Security.
And as a general principle, do you support what Representative Ryan of Wisconsin has come up with for Medicare and Social Security?
As a general principle, I think we need to very carefully look at those programs and seek changes to them to keep them solvent.
Medicare is the 800-pound gorilla, elephant, whatever, in the corner. It's the Pac-Man of the budget, and there doesn't seem to be a consensus between the two parties on how to solve that. Where do you stand on that issue?
Well, Medicare. Medicare is a program, probably, had I been voting when it was instituted, I wouldn't have voted for it. But it's here. People are reliant upon it. People have paid into it for generations and expect to be able to have that benefit whenever they are elderly and in retirement years. I think it must be reformed. I think we cannot continue to provide the level of service that is currently there in the Medicare program. However, I think that any changes need to be phased in. I think people that are already on Medicare and relying upon that, it would be very, very difficult and unfair to cut those benefits for them at this place in their life.
Would you favor increasing the age of eligibility for Medicare?
Yes, but for the same reason Social Security.
Okay. Let's talk about immigration and go to one other question. Immigration is a hot button, and the Supreme Court ruling earlier this week has put it in the forefront. And as you know, both Senator Rubio and former Governor Bush are arguing that the Republicans need to tone down the rhetoric, or they will lose the Hispanic vote for a generation. What's your stance on immigration? And do you perceive that? Do you agree with Senator Rubio and Governor Bush that there is the potential of losing the Hispanic vote for the Republican Party?
Well, first of all, I believe in the rule of law in the United States of America. I believe even in immigration, we need to follow the rule of law. We have many people who are in violation of law because they're here illegally. That said, because there is such a large influx and has-beens, we need to work together to formulate some kind of a plan to enhance the illegals' accessibility to citizenship and to legal status. I do not believe in amnesty, but that said, I understand what Senator Rubio and former Governor Bush say, and I think that we may be in trouble with the Hispanic vote with the Republican Party if the rhetoric has continued so strongly. However, the rule of law exists, and people who are in our country need to follow our laws. And if they're here illegally, then they either need to seek a path to be here legally or they need to go home.
Okay, what about the DREAM Act? Those are for that applies to children who were brought here as minors illegally. They didn't come here on their own; their parents brought them. Senator Rubio is toying with a proposal, hasn't come out with a firm one yet, but basically, again, saying that they need to find some ground to keep these young people here, or find a path for them to stay here. What's your stance on the? I
agree with him because, as you just said, they had no choice in coming. Their parents brought them. They've been here. They've been educated here. They've been reared here. Many of them serve in our military. However, I think it needs to be a bipartisan effort. I think we need to work together and form a path to legal status and citizenship for those young people, and so that they can become productive citizens in our country, as they really are right now, but legal productive citizens.
You were a supporter of Senator Santorum in the primary before he dropped out. One of his key stance was on manufacturing, tax credits for manufacturing. The rest of the Republican candidates poo-pooed that, said it wasn't going to work. Do you support Senator Santorum's manufacturing stance, and If so, why? And if not, why?
Well, I support anything that can increase manufacturing in this country. I think it's been a sad legacy that we've had in recent years that manufacturing has gone largely offshore. We need to bring that back to our country, and I don't know if it should be done in the way that Senator Santorum's necessarily outlined it, but I think by reducing regulation, reducing corporate income tax, that we can find a way to enhance the ability of manufacturing to increase in our country and thus produce more jobs.
The Democratic Party, President Obama is gaining in polls across in the so-called challenge states, the states that were Governor Romney and he need to win in order to win the White House. And what I've been reading in the newspapers, he's winning by using the class argument, saying basically Republicans favor the rich, favor the CEOs. No one's out there covering your back and say, hey, wages have been flat for 10 years, your 401k's in the tank, you don't have a pension. What message can you give the constituents in this district that you're in their corner?
Well, I disagree with his assessment, first of all. And I think if you look at the most recent polls, the gap is shrinking between the two candidates, even in the battleground states. I believe in everybody getting more of a fair shake. I believe in the tax system needs to be reformed. I believe in a fairer, flatter kind of a tax that benefits all people. I don't believe in penalizing necessarily someone who, because they've worked hard and earned a lot of money, and I don't believe that they should have to bear the huge burden. While on the other side, 49% of the American people pay $0 in taxes. I think it needs to be a tax structure needs to be put in place so that everyone pays his fair share and on a prorated basis. I don't think that anyone should get favoritism because of their status in life. We're a country that was not formed on the class system, and it's kind of evolved to that, and I want to see it brought back to a free America where everyone contributes and everyone benefits.
Your fellow St. Johns County resident and challenger, Mr. DeSantis, has sort of poo-pooed your public service, said that isn't a qualification for being in Congress. I could work in the assumption you disagree with that and give yourself a chance to defend your work as qualifications to be in Congress.
Well, it seems to me that if you go to the U.S. Congress, you are the ultimate, or any federal office, you are the ultimate public servant. And I think that if you learn at the local level how to serve people, how to be responsive to their needs, how to answer their hard questions, that certainly is a qualifier for you, or for me in this case, to enhance my ability to serve at a higher level. I would assume that the reason he poo-poos that is because he doesn't have that history, and it's been my great pleasure to serve this community and to work hard for the betterment of St. Johns County, and I intend to continue to do that.
An interesting spectrum of the candidates. We have one candidate who's supported by the Koch brothers Foundation. We have a couple who are working very hard to identify robustly with the Tea Party. Where do you fit in the spectrum of Republicans? Are you in the Koch camp? Are you in the Tea Party camp?
Well, I'm an interesting Republican animal. I'm a strong fiscal conservative and a strong social conservative. However, I am not pegged all the way right so that I'm about to fall off the edge. I believe in working together with people. I believe that in order to move our country forward, we're going to have to end the polarization that we've been experiencing in our nation for a good while now. People won't talk to the others on the other side of the aisle just on a philosophical basis, and therefore we're not moving forward. I believe that we need to work together, not abandon ever our core values, but on the things that we can compromise to move our country forward. We need to do that.
There are those that run for this office that would argue that education at a national level should be relegated to the states, not the nation. Yet one of your planks in your platform is the ability to take this experience in St. Johns County and help fulfill the American dream. What are your thoughts of federal government involvement in education at local levels?
Well, I believe, as do all my opponents, I imagine, that federal government has a very, very, very limited role in local education. What we've experienced at the local level and all over Florida is so much micromanagement. The 10th Amendment says that those things that are delegated to the states need to stay with the states, and I would propose that things that need to be local need to be local. Federal government has no business dictating to us how many times we have to test, which groups we have to parse out. No Child Left Behind and Race to the Top have required many, many, many micromanaging things. I think the federal government has much too great a role in local education, and I think it needs to, while the focus is on improving education for all the children in the United States, I think the dictatorial way that it's been handled needs to be changed.
Okay. We talked a bit about Social Security and Medicare needs change, needs revamping. Can you be a little more specific, like how?
Well, that's difficult.
What are your ideas on
Well,
that?
I think, as we've discussed, I think we need to do things like have a hard look at how the benefits are crafted and how they are administered. I think we most certainly can look at the age at which those benefits are kicked in. Not a very good word, but kicked in. And when they kick in, and also just at the level of benefits and all the bureaucracy around it. I think one of the major reasons why we are in a huge deficit position is because the trust fund has been raided, and I think we need to stop that immediately. Monies are set aside in trust funds for the purposes for which they are defined, and I don't think that using monies from those trust funds for other matters is ever prudent. And I think that we're going to have to carefully look at each of the benefits, how they're administered, and try to cut out the bureaucratic piece of it that accounts for a whole lot of the expenditure on both sides of Medicare and Social Security. All the regulations and all the micromanaging accountability that is there ties up people to the place where doctors don't want to accept people on Medicare any longer, and they most certainly don't want to accept Medicaid patients. And we need to get to the place where we're able to deliver quality health care to our citizens, but at the same time take away some of the regulation that is crippling the healthcare industry.
Would you favor privatization or voucher systems for Medicare or Social Security privatization, letting the people help control their?
I would favor that as being a choice for people. People choosing whether to be on the system like it is, or choosing to go in and seek their own care but with a little support from the voucher system.
Okay. Margaret?
Well, I want to pick up on that because I've been on Medicare now, forced to go to Medicare by age, which leads me to believe it's an insurance company issue.
I agree with you.
That you can't just change the rules at the federal level, because you have to have the insurance companies agreeing to continue to accept people. And as soon as I turned 65, I got a letter within 24 hours telling me that I would now have, my current insurance would be secondary. My primary that we have paid into for more than 30 years would be secondary. And we're still fighting a claim that was filed on February 23rd, my birthday.
Oh my goodness.
And the insurance company says, no, we won't accept it any longer. And Medicare's saying, it isn't ours.
And so you're stuck with it.
So we're stuck with it. I don't know where we're going with it except consumer affairs. But how the lobbies that you're going to face, the lobbying that you're going to face with these issues. You don't face this much lobbying, I don't think, as a school board member.
No.
So, you know, how are you going to face all these companies that parade into, and on any issue?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I've not ever been anybody who has allowed my vote to be bought. or to be highly influenced. But on the other side of it, I am a thoughtful listener. I try to parse out the good things in a conversation and take those and capitalize on them, while at the same time, all the fluff and all the just the propaganda that comes along with things like that, just being thoughtful, insightful, and making sure that the things that I accept from those conversations are things that are valid and useful for our citizenry. I know a lot of pressure comes. I know that a lot of that is accompanied by money. I also know that I'm a principled person and don't particularly care to have my vote bought. But however, I would listen. I would work closely to determine the good things in a conversation and do away with the rest of it. And then try to work with the other people with whom I serve to incorporate those into good policy for the United States.
How would you work to get more of the federal income tax returned to the state in like lump sums for education, lump sums for transportation rather than by project, or
Right.
and lump sum for Medicaid, because you know that's always going to be.
Oh, yeah, Medicaid.
I don't think that ever is going away.
Yeah, we talked about elephants in the
Yeah.
room. That's a herd of
So
elephants.
would you favor kind of, how would you do a lump sum?
Well, again, the 10th Amendment says those things that the states are responsible for, they need to be the ones administrating. I think if it would be much better to have block grants and allow states to use those monies as the need is in the particular state. Our issues here in Florida with all our retirees are quite different from some other state that has more young people. And so I think allowing states to have block grants to deal with their particular needs in those areas of health care, education, whatever, is a better track than having line item things and attached with a whole lot of regulation.
Yeah. And you mentioned in the little information that we had asked for you ahead of time on your goals, balance the budget and reduce debt. What's your first move as a freshman legislator, freshman representative in that area?
If you had any clout as a freshman representative, which you don't, I would propose legislation for a balanced budget over time, a path to a balanced budget. Our country cannot continue with 40 cents of every dollar that we spend being borrowed. We cannot continue there. That is not sustainable. And we cannot continue with all the runaway spending. We cannot continue with all of the just unaccountable yet highly regulated things that we do in this country. Regulation is stymieing every industry of everyone. You know, I've been focused on education for a long time, and I've been trying to learn about other areas and talking to people in the banking industry and the Dodd-Frank amendment. The people in small banks. I was speaking to one gentleman at a community bank, and he had to add $1.3 million to his bottom line, his top line, to provide for just compliance officers to take care of all the regulation that's come. Agriculture's the same way. Insurance, not insurance so much as some of the others, but mortgages and home, all our industry is so strangled in regulation that it's stymieing our ability to provide for more jobs and more growth and our ability for our economy to recover.
And you're in a race with 7 people and there's
Yes.
9 altogether.
True.
And where do you stand out? What makes you appeal? Why are we talking to you? Why do you want this? And what makes the difference between you and your opponents? I mean, that's a pretty big ballot.
It is. Well, one thing is, rather obvious. There's a gender difference. I'm the only woman in the campaign, and I think that brings a certain strength to it because women look at life a little differently than men do, and sometimes can bring a different perspective. We're down to only 16% of the House of Representatives being women seated there, and that's a shame in my opinion. We need a balance, and so just bringing the almost the intuitive perception of a woman's perspective, I think, is a very strong thing. I think that my service to our community, we in St. Johns County have never had, to my knowledge, a member of the House of Representatives, somebody to serve our very area. I know we have in the Senate, but I don't believe we ever have in the House. At least not in my remembrance, which is, wow, you've been here longer than I have. Maybe you...
Not in modern times, I would say.
Yeah.
Not modern.
So I think that this is our opportunity to have someone who understands our community and understands our needs and is responsive to our citizenry to be able to take a seat and try to lead our country in a better direction.
Now, I know this district includes Volusia, which is, I guess, bigger than St. Johns County.
It is,
overall. Where would your main office be? Would it be here? Would it be there? Would it be a satellite here?
I think my main office probably would be somewhere like in the south of St. Augustine, in order to be accessible to all the people in the four-county region. From that, even from my house to go to Volusia, and I live in the way of the north, it's only like an hour and a half. So if it were in the south of St. Augustine, that would cut that in half and allow people to be accessible. And I would like to staff that office with people that were very responsive, who would return phone calls and address people's needs in a very timely manner.
Okay, thanks.
What if you use earmarks?
There you go. You can
I
still
don't-
your question.
I do not like earmarks. I believe that in any level of government that expenditures need to be vetted. I don't believe that things outside the budgetary process are good for our country, or our state, or our local government. So.
City of St. Augustine has a new seawall going up that came from an earmark. Council on Aging has a beautiful new building, which is funded in part by an earmark. As a freshman legislator, who doesn't have a lot of power, how would you get things like that funded?
Well, that'd be difficult. We have to work together with people that are more seasoned and explain and advocate strongly for local projects to go through the budgetary process.
But how are you going to persuade a guy from North Dakota to vote for our seawall?
I'd invite him down here and let him see that and what a beautiful community we live in and how we need to preserve that, and that one of the ways that we can is by building that seawall.
Well, my hint to you is invite him in January.
Exactly. So it snows up to his neck, while snow is up to his neck.
I know this is rude, but I keep checking this because the Supreme Court's ruling on
Yeah,
healthcare
has
is
it
supposed to
come?
come down. Well, no, it hasn't.
Okay.
But I'm waiting to see the answer because I want to ask you a question on that. How this district is very is not monolithic. This is the conservative part of the district here. Flagler County and Volusia both voted for President Obama in the last election. How are you appealing to that part of the district, which perhaps is not as conservative as this?
Well, I've forged relationships with people across the whole political spectrum during my service on the school board, and I know people from all over the state, work closely with all of them, and that's why I said what I said about not being so pegged and far right that I can't reach across and work with others for the betterment of the community. As I have conversations with people from all points on the spectrum, I find that we can find commonality in places, and sometimes we cannot, and the line has to be drawn. However, just speaking with people, even though we have different political spectrum, everybody understands the place we are in our country and the difficulty. It's just a matter of what pathway we seek to solve the problems that we have.
We've met some of the candidates, and some of them are pretty bombastic. But as Margot pointed out, there are an awful lot of people on this thing, and you point out the difference in gender and the fact that you have roots here. On policy, where do you disagree with these folks? What distinguishes you in policy as opposed to, where you put your head at night?
I don't think that of the five that, including myself, that I know pretty well, I don't think you would find too many places that we disagree on policy.
Mm-hmm.
We all of us are fiscal conservatives. We all of us are strongly believe in our country. We believe in exceptionalism. We believe in returning our country to the place of financial stability that it once enjoyed, and there is not a great deal of difference in us philosophically and policy-wise.
Let me ask about, you talked early on about the decimation of the military. Could you expand on that a little bit, about what you mean by that and how you would address that?
Okay. Well, as you know, our military greatly expanded during these years of war, and as the wars are winding down, our president is also drawing down troops, drawing down the ability of people to re-enlist, and our troop strength is going down. I am very concerned about that in a twofold way. One, I understand fully why he's doing it, because we don't need the troop strength in a time of peace that we do in a time of war, and it is very expensive. On the other side of it, to bring it down to such a place that in the event of another emergency, another tragedy, not to have the troop strength and the naval capacity and the Air Force that we need in place to deal with such a threat on our national security, in my view, is a dangerous position to be in.
You mentioned flat tax, fair tax. Could you share your views on that? Because it comes in, I mean, there are many proponents or people who propose differences in those common terms. Could you expand on what you mean by that?
I would much more like to see our tax code. Well, we've got to revise the tax code because no one understands it. I don't believe any one human understands that thing. We've got to revise it because it's overbearing and overarching. But I believe that if we were to have a tax code that only had 1 or 2 or 3 maybe levels to it, and also that very greatly reduced the ability of people to write off various things and bring it down to maybe just charitable giving and home mortgage loans maybe, and things like that. The bedrock things that most Americans can claim on their tax return, and eliminate all of those exemptions that allow people who are uber rich to pay very, very few taxes. I think that would be very beneficial to our country, as well as the fact I mentioned earlier that 49% of Americans pay no tax, and many of them get tax credits. They pay nothing, but yet they receive benefit from the tax system as it is now. I think if it were flattened out so that on an income pro rata basis there were only 2 or 3 rates, and I think that we would find that we had more revenue and less regulation.
Okay, this just in. The United States Supreme Court has struck down the healthcare individual mandate. But that now
just
does,
that, and that was all.
Well, this is all I've read
Okay,
so far.
okay.
Just supposed
I'm very interested in it.
that puts the ball now in the camp of the Republicans to come up with a plan. So what plan would you favor? And part of that, do you see that as a goal? One of the goals of the Obama healthcare plan was to provide near universal coverage. So one, do you see that as a goal? And 2, what would you favor for a new healthcare plan?
Well, I'll tell you, when that healthcare bill was being crafted, I said repeatedly as I watched the coverage of it, why are we going so fast? Why are we not being thoughtful about this? And then when the Speaker of the House of Representatives stood up and said, we got to pass this bill in order to know what's in it, that raised alarm bells to me. I think we need to go back. My opinion is the whole of the bill needs to be repealed and go back and start over and be very thoughtful about it. We need to provide for the citizenry. We really do need we need tort reform that is driving a much of a high cost of our health care. When someone has a splinter and the doctor feels compelled to go do an MRI just to make sure he doesn't get sued, something's wrong there. I believe that we need to open up the lines, interstate lines for purchasing health insurance to increase competition. I believe that we need to relook just all the ways that we deliver health care. Certainly our our very poor people. We've got to find a way outside the emergency rooms of our hospitals to provide health care for those individuals. But I think it needs to be a thoughtful, carefully drafted policy, and to allow for all of those things, but yet not to overarch and take away personal freedoms like what was just struck down, requiring people to purchase a product.
Do you agree with the Obama administration premise that coverage should be near universal? They didn't seek universal coverage, they sought near universal coverage. Do you agree with that as a goal?
I think, were it to be possible, yes, I think it would be a good goal, because just lately I was talking to the administrator of the Putnam Hospital over there, and he said that their emergency room is just flooded with people who have no health care, no insurance, nothing, and the only place they have to turn for a bad cold is the emergency room. So to provide some level of health insurance for the vast majority of our population, so that we can bring down the cost, because it's far less expensive to go to a primary care physician than it is to go to an emergency room, I think would be a valuable goal in this pursuit of health care in our country.
Okay, I'm done, sir.
I think I am as well. I think that answered my questions. Margaret?
Nope. Yeah.
So you get to, as I tell everyone, you get the last word in a room that's very difficult to get the last word.
I just thank you very much for taking the time to be thoughtful. The record has always done that, in my experience, and it helps our voters to learn the candidates and learn their stances and their issues, and I appreciate you taking the time to do these interviews and making that information available. I would say again that it has been my great privilege and honor to serve this community for 33 years in various capacities, and it would be my greater honor to go and serve it in a stronger way. And I would appreciate everyone's vote on August 14th. Thank you.
Thank you, Beth.